So how do Trump and Putin divide the world, and is there a place for Ukraine there? This and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Iryna Uzlova, and today with us as regularly is Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel RashkinReport and local elected official in Wisconsin. Yuri, hello, glad to see you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to see you, Iryna. Hello from sunny, snowy Wisconsin. And we had a big week. Let's get through the week's events.
But so bright sunshine, and I believe that the same sun will rise under Ukraine soon. We will hope. But a lot of science tell us about another reality. About this reality, we will talk right now. The United States suggests that a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia will include demarcation. It won't suit either side. USA Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said this at a press conference today. According to him, realism is an important part of the conversation in the context of ending the war between Ukraine and Russia. Hegseth believes that pointing to realism, such as the impossibility of returning to the Ukrainian borders of 2014, is not a concession to Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. This is an acknowledgement of the realities of hard power on the ground after great sacrifices made first by the Ukrainians and then by the allies, and then the realization that a negotiated peace would be a kind of demarcation that neither side wants, he added. Is this realism or a surrender of interests, and which interests?
Depends on how you look at it, but you could say it's both, because it is realism, it is a surrender at the same time, because if we look at our values, then it is a surrender. If we look at the people who are now in charge or going to be in charge of our the Department of Defense and National Security Agency, all of those places, who are those people leading them now, then it's a surrender. But if you look at it from the point of view of big countries run the show and small countries, maybe they get to exist, maybe they don't. You know, look at Georgia, look at different countries that have these pro-Russia governments that they're kind of like separate country, but are they really? And that kind of a dubious difference without much distinction, actually we might see soon, following the latest developments. I think Russia is going to be probing soon whether those countries even really make sense anymore, whether it makes sense to have Georgia that is almost like pro-Russia, but it's not quite, or is it easier to just take over? Is it easier to just take over certain states if you know the United States is not going to do anything? I think it's a remarkable possibility that is also reflects what realism that Secretary Hegseth spoke of. I think to me that means strength, might means right. And I think that's what he is referring to as realism. Let's, as President Trump said, what was Ukraine thinking? Did it not realize that Russia is so much bigger? That's realism, Trump style. And I think that in that reality, we're now going to exist until a different format is offered. It is remarkable to see how much all the talk about values, about important things of solidarity and standing with others and agreements seem to be falling apart day by day. Because in this new realism, of course, the United States, at least short term, is going to be in a better negotiation position if it negotiates with each European country individually, because United States is stronger and bigger, therefore it is better for United States in this new vision of realism if Europe is divided. Because that's better for United States. It promotes the idea of American strength. So it just kind of flips the narrative and flips the scenario that we're used to seeing upside down. And as soon as we get comfortable with it, we're going to see a little clearer what's going on. But I wonder if people in the United States are going to have almost like an allergic reaction to this, because the transformation that is happening is so sudden and so strong and so big, because now we're talking about possibility of Vladimir Putin, or likelihood, coming over to the United States. And what I thought was a daring bet with the Ukrainian journalist, whether Donald Trump will go to see Vladimir Putin on May 9th, which is one of the biggest Russian holidays, when Russians celebrate the end of their war against Nazi Germany, whether Donald Trump will be there next to Putin. It was a daring bet 2 weeks ago. Now it's pretty much a given. Like, of course, Trump would want to go to see Vladimir Putin, especially considering that Chinese leader Xi Jinping is also going to be there. So this is like a good way to lose money, because realism is so sudden and so stark that it's staring us in the face, and hopefully we can just kind of stop looking at this kind of squintingly like at this new sun and admit that it's going to be bright whether we like it or not.
Financial Times reported that Donald Trump opens the door to Vladimir Putin's grandest ambitions, and they also say, due to their sources, that Putin and Trump want to finish Russian-Ukrainian war to Easter or to May 9, about which date you mentioned exactly. So, Yuri, do you believe that these terms are in interests between Trump and Putin, and how realistic are they?
I think that the most remarkable thing right now is to watch American media and American mainstream political class try to explain to themselves and to their audience what is going on. Because they're trying to describe this from the point of view of national interests of the United States as it existed prior to Donald Trump being sworn in, and it just doesn't add up. Because, like, this doesn't, why would we be making friends with, how is this helping national security of the United States? How is leaving Ukraine helping, when we've been speaking for 3 years about how this is going to be just opening up doors to China's greatest ambitions, because we were hoping to beat up Putin in Ukraine so that we don't have to beat up China. But now everything changed. And so I think that, of course, this is this is Putin's greatest dreams, but this is also, you don't have to be like a conspiracy theorist just to see that there's a plan that was put together in place. We see it as Plan 2025 in the United States, but clearly the time that Donald Trump was not in office was spent making plans, visions, consultations with everybody that he needs to work with closely, and there's nobody that he wants to have a better relations with than Vladimir Putin. Because so this is like just an alliance that was staring us in the face, because if you take 3 strongest countries in the world and you look at it from the point of view of like racketeering, then Russia, China, and the United States are in a really enviable position to do as they wish. That's new realism, of course. Yes, I think that fits right into that. So is this Putin's greatest ambitions? Sure. Is this America's greatest defeat? Possibly, because we had no idea that we could, the things that we would be willing to do, that we would install people in these positions of power, they effectively are surrendering to Russia. We're losing our intelligence. We're firing people. We're destroying federal government. And by saying we, I mean because we, collective United States, through Elon Musk, who is, I think, is really confusing people, because like who is he? He speaks English with a stranger accent than I think I do, or maybe I speak with a stranger accent than he does. Either way, I wouldn't stand in the Oval Office with a president of the United States sitting next to me and talking about how American people, how American taxpayers' money should at the very least be spent in America. I guess if I say with a funny rag, America, so it's just American taxpayers' money should be in America. you kind of would go and then go, that's just strange. Yes, and Americans are looking at this and saying, this is kind of really weird. What is going on here? So there's a certain realization that is happening that Elon Musk is manifesting a lot of Putin's wish list of destroying America, while Trump is trying to reorient this rapidly potentially sinking or hurt ship towards Putin at the same time. It's just remarkable what we're seeing, and to say that these are the best days of Putin's and probably Trump's life would not be an understatement. The only thing I say in defense of all of this is that in 1980, the early 1980s, I should get the year right, Yuri Andropov came to power, and he was head of KGB. He came to power to lead the Soviet Union. He was the dark cardinal. He was going to be, this is going to be like the second coming of Stalin, if not worse. It was going to be terrible and horrible, and then he quickly died. Because, as they say, his liver or some part of his body rejected him. And so he died quickly within about a year. So I think that there's certain elements that cannot be discounted, but I also feel like more and more Americans are asking themselves, how did we end up in this form of realism, I suppose, where Biff Tanner got a hold of Sports Almanac. This is a reference to Back to the Future, but boy, a lot of similarities.
Yuri, but Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said that conversation with Trump was really good, and they talked about security guarantees, and we told Trump that we want fair peace and so on. Is it true, or maybe is this just a display of diplomacy by our president?
I think Zelensky is in a very unenviable position right now, because at first he chose to fight because he knew that the United States under President Biden was going to stand behind him and support him, at least to some extent, and he would not be left alone to fight Russia. And now he is not only left alone to fight Russia, although Europe is technically on his side, but he also has United States, which leader of which country is just not really in good, I don't know, he has kind of a negative opinion of Zelensky. I think from Donald Trump's point of view, they have kind of bad history, where Zelensky has not done things that Donald Trump wanted him to do, and now Putin wants Ukraine much more than Donald Trump cares about Ukraine. And while Russia is not likely to be able to militarily defeat Ukraine, it can certainly hope to install a Russian-minded president. And this is, of course, there's a couple of problems with this scenario, one of which is Zelensky. So Zelensky himself, which is ironic because he was elected saying that he could make peace with Russia. It's like cursed situation. And nobody can make peace with Russia, it seems. So that's problem one. And Zelensky is trying to do his best not to show that Donald Trump is pretty, I think is kind of adversarial, more and more so disparaging would be perhaps term to use his relationship towards Zelensky. Donald Trump even said that, hey, look at Zelensky's ratings. They're not that great, which is not a helpful statement if you're a politician thinking about re-election ever. So clearly Donald Trump is not helping. But the other problem with this scenario, for those that are not paying attention, is Ukrainians are not likely to vote for a president, leader who is pro-Russian. And so this situation is also a non-starter. But of course, as long as there's Zelensky, you don't even know. And I think what Putin and potentially Trump are going to bet on and dare Ukrainians to do is to vote for a pro-Russian president versus having a greater war that can potentially even, who knows what it can do to the rest of the country. I think all of this is slow walking to abyss. And perhaps I think we're even all over the abyss, and we're kind of on this rope, just kind of like hoping that we'll, hit the floor before we burn out of the rope. But Ukrainians are very good and been very frustrating to Donald Trump by their, on one hand, agreement, on the other hand, disagreement, on the other hand, they're not signing agreement, on the other hand, what's going on. So maybe all of this stalling will buy time for some leadership to emerge. Because I think ultimately what's happening right now is that we have bad guys, bad big men are making this philosophy reality again, realism, and we hardly have anybody leading the other side. And I think that is a challenge. But in the United States, we actually see Bernie Sanders, who's going to be 87 years old in 2028, I believe, is currently heading out to Iowa, like nearby from us here in Wisconsin, because this snow doesn't scare Bernie, because he's on a campaign against oligarchy. Well, finally, at least somebody understands that there is a problem too. So I think that leadership is needed. Hopefully, we're going to have some younger leadership, and that's where it's headed.
What do you see as security guarantees for Ukraine?
I think that, as we have said so bravely so many times, that the only guarantee of Ukraine is Ukraine's armed forces. Never has that statement been more true, because the only guarantee of Ukraine's safety is Ukraine. I think that there is good questions about what Europe is capable of doing. I think Europe is coming to a very sudden and clear realization that America is an umbrella, safe security umbrella, that's just not gonna open. But it's gonna still charge money for operations. So I think that now, as I've been thinking for a while, I don't know, what's the point of NATO? Like, I think that there needs to be an alliance, but at this pace, I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump and that Munich conference invited Vladimir Putin and Russia to join NATO. Because why not? Because this is the world we live in now. So I think that guarantee of safety lies in Ukraine, and then next level in countries that understand Ukraine's importance to their own safety. And if those countries are led by disinformation to elect pro-Putin candidates and pro-Putin politicians, it's only going to make situation worse. But so far, it seems like the countries that are knowing that they're next on the list, and that's Baltic states, that's Moldova, and that's Poland, those countries at least are looking very realistic, very eyes wide open at this, and hopefully will be able to put some kind of a resistance, emboldened by the fact that Ukraine has done so much to weaken Russia over the last 3 years. We can never forget the sacrifice of Ukrainian soldiers, because there's a question of what have all these people died for? They've really, they increased the price of this for Russia, and that's going to make Russia weaker, and it's going to make it easier for somebody else to stand up to Russia and to eventually get Russia defeated, because it seems like Putin is really dependent on his war machine operating for power. So if he stops war, if somebody effectively pushes him back, then there's a good chance that that snowball will grow, and his country, weakened by all of this aggression, and his regime eventually will collapse, so that Russia can deal with their own problems instead of attacking others. But until then, first we have to push back somewhere.
But that countries you mentioned about always understand a risk from Russian Federation, and they were our big allies for all this time of full-scale Russian-Ukrainian war. How do you think has other part of Europe realized that it's time to wake up?
I think that's a really interesting question, because you're right. The countries that are next to Russia, that see Russia, that have always been concerned about Russia, they understand well. What about the rest? And I think the rest is much bigger, really, than Europe. I think that there should be a really much more concerted effort to find countries, maybe South Korea. Maybe South Korea is a kind of a partner that can be much more useful in this situation, now that they understand that South Korea, without United States standing there then what is the value of existing policies? So South Korea may want to take a more pro-Ukrainian approach. I think there'll be other countries such as Canada that now feels under attack from the United States and might be more inclined to even further help Ukraine in whatever different ways it can. Of course, with the understanding that United States is the primary maker of weapons. And I think that that's, this is where stuff, we are the army, we're supposed to be the arsenal of democracy, but there's a lot of other countries that are interested in Ukraine's success, and I think building those alliances quickly all over the world, Australia, Canada, and on, is going to be important. At the same time, we see that Donald Trump is also doing the same, and Vladimir Putin is doing the same, whether we're talking about BRICS or whether we're talking about the fact that now Donald Trump or Elon Musk or somebody is inviting and building closer ties, I think, between South Africa and then white people in South Africa who are now being invited to come out to the United States because they're being persecuted in South Africa. So, I mean, this global situation is developing fast. And I think just being Ukraine focused centered, not thinking that there's other countries that might be very much interested in Ukraine's success in this global world is being a little short-sighted. And I hope that there's a lot of attention being paid to these things.
Maybe we'll be seeing new allies with each other, not only NATO, for example.
That's precisely what I'm hoping for, because I feel like old structures such as United Nations may be a beautiful thing, but sometimes they just don't work. And there's still a problem, and there's a need for a solution. So I think that people who want to find solutions hopefully will be looking for them instead of being focused on, I don't know, it's always easy to blame Joe Biden. Oh, Joe Biden. You know, I wish that somebody would give Donald Trump a little present of a welcome floor mat that would have a picture of Joe Biden on it so that he could always wipe his feet on it, would put probably in a good mood. Because, I mean, okay, sure, we can blame Joe Biden. But going forward, what are we going to do? And I think that looking for solutions and looking for alliances and allies is going to be important. I think that what stands opposed to this realism that is proposed right now by Secretary Hegseth, by others, there has to be an alternative that reflects the fact that realism actually leads to long-term failure and collapse and destruction, because it treats others with disrespect, and therefore it destroys trust. And it's going to lead to all of those terrible things that lack of trust does. Therefore, maybe something opposite can form and we can move in a different direction. But there's just a big conversation that needs to occur. And right now, the Democratic Party in the United States seems to be mostly concerned about things like, do we oppose every action by Trump administration, or do we pick our battles and go, okay, well, maybe foreign aid is not something that Americans really do support, even though we've been saying that we support it for decades. But all of a sudden, oh, realism, I guess Americans aren't really going to stand up for foreign aid, so maybe we shouldn't fight for it. You know, those kinds of conversations just lead us into thinking that the situation is almost normal. And it's not almost normal. It's nothing close to normal. And I think that appointments of Donald Trump and his administration are the clearest indication to me of how not normal things are, because people are policy, and people that we see appointed to these positions, starting with Secretary Hegseth, is going to be the policy that we're going to have. So I think we're going to learn a lot of things we don't want to believe. And I think the sooner people understand how much we have lost and how much we're losing every day, the sooner it's going to allow us to stop thinking about this in terms of conventional politics and understand and look at this in terms of survival of our state, survival of our, I'm not going to say civilization, but our way of life. American way of life, I feel, is in jeopardy as much as it's ever been. And we really do depend on a very sophisticated machinery of federal and state and local government to work, to interact. It has grown over almost 250 years into a very complex mechanism that is right now being destroyed. I can't imagine, but I'm very curious to see how American people will respond to this.
Interesting detail. Putin will think he won, and that can't be allowed. US President Donald Trump said Ukraine will continue to receive aid. Otherwise, Putin would think he won. So do we see new aid packages from the USA?
I will be thrilled to see some action. We have heard a lot of words, different words, various words. And at the same time, we hear people who say, don't pay attention to what Donald Trump says. Look at what he does. I guess I'm more in that camp. I'm going to say, okay, that's a beautiful statement, and it might seem outdated by the time this program airs. You know, I was commenting on the statement by Donald Trump that he was offering $500 million for minerals in Ukraine. And by the time it aired, it turned out that the number was apparently $500 billion, which is, I guess, a little more reasonable, because $500 million as a guarantee of security seems kind of insulting, being 150 times less than Biden administration help. But at the same time, if it's $500 billion, then you look at the market for these minerals, and it's like $11 billion a year. So 500 billion, what does that mean? So all of this seems like a lot of interesting conversations, considering that none of these minerals are actually, like, the land is not developed. Who is going to pay for all of this? So there's a lot of talk that we're hearing, and I'm glad that there's some words that can be interpreted, translated, and understood to have some positive meaning. And it is true. It is true that right now, that if we want to show Putin that he's won, then we just need to continue on our current course. So continuing aid to Ukraine would be changing our current course, which at this point, to me, is we're not helping Ukraine anymore, and therefore Putin has won. But if Donald Trump does not want Putin for some reason to think that he has won, sometimes I just fail to understand the motivation of the person. Yes, of course, it would be great to continue to help Ukraine. The only problem is it seems like every time Putin meets with Trump, we get some kind of a statement that visually is represented by what we saw in Helsinki in 2018, where Donald Trump just seems completely beaten down, and diminished, regardless of his size. Kind of similarly to how he was diminished with Elon Musk at that press conference at the Oval Office, but even more so. It's just not good. It's not a good combination.
Will the situation develop dynamically and unexpectedly in the nearest future?
I think so. I think what we're seeing right now is what I would call a blitzkrieg. Whether it's Kiev in 3 days or what is going on, but I think the Trump administration is clearly having a very fast movement. They're implementing a lot of actions in the United States. They're saying a lot of things that are contradicting a lot of things that have been said for decades all over the world. They are leading to really fast changes really fast. I think that means that countries that are going to have elections soon, such as Germany, which is going to have a big election on February 23rd, and where Elon Musk has already expressed his strong opinion and support for their far-right party, AfD, however they're pronounced, but the right wing. That means that they're not sitting going, wow, we've accomplished everything we wanted to accomplish. This is great. We can go and rest somewhere. These people are going full blast until something stops them. And when they got a little bit mucked up in the courts, this is slowing them down. That's good. But where they're not meeting resistance, they continue pushing forward. Therefore, on the European front, I guess, considering the powerful role that was played there by the Biden administration and American involvement, which, of course, from Trump supporters' point of view, means that Biden was just pushing us towards World War III and war with Russia, and now we're going to have peace, fewer countries, whatever, who cares, but peace now and no nuclear threat. So that means that withdrawing American involvement is going to dramatically reshape the balance and the dynamic in Europe of how it's going to proceed. And just sometimes statements that the warranty is null and void is enough. Just a statement that we will not be honoring our agreements. Have a nice day. Goodbye. Please don't forget to send your payments. That's huge amount of action for those people that were waiting for enough action, from Donald Trump. I think his action in certain ways is going to be demonstrated by his inaction, his inability to do things, his lack of desire to do things. That's going to be, has been his modus operandi, taking things out. It's not quite, well, sort of similar to KGB approach, because the thing with KGB, as I understand it from interviewing different agents, is that destruction is really their thing. They're not a building kind of thing people. They destroy things. And what's going on right now is a destructive, very much experience. Again, I just have to remind myself that America is not Russia and Russia is not America. But exactly what that means, I'm finding out right now.
Yuri, thank you very much for this conversation, for all our dialogues. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Take care of yourself, Iryna.
Take care of yourself too, and all our viewers. Yuri Rashkin was with me, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and local elected official in Wisconsin. My name is Iryna Uzlova. Thank you guys. See you.